Where else but the city of merchants, one whose fortune was founded on global trade to host the celebrity wedding of the digital age's king of e-commerce. Dateline Venice, Jeff Bezos, billionaire owner of online trading platform Amazon, tying the knot with journalist come TV personality Lauren Sanchez in a spectacle that's drawn both paparazzi and protesters. What does this spectacle out of a Fellini movie say about the age we live in? Organizers tempering the extravagance with pledges of giving to good causes. For the world's third richest man, one who now owns the Washington Post newspaper, what does money buy? We'll ask about pushback and the look for a city that hardly needs more publicity, what with its 150,000 visitors per day, 3 times more than the local population. Is the issue Jeff Bezos' obscene wealth, or the advertisement it brings to a bucket list destination that's already heaving under the weight of record amounts of tourists? Today in the France 24 debate, to whom does a city like Venice belong? And with us from Venice, Simone Venturiti, Deputy Mayor in charge of tourism, social welfare, health, economic development, labor, and housing policy. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you.
Jane Deosto is co-founder and executive director of the We Are Here Venice group, which advocates for conserving La Serenissima, as the locals call it, as a living city. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Joining us as well from Saint-Tropez, journalist Dana Thomas, your new book, How Luxury Lost Its Luster. Give us the elevator pitch, please.
Oh, it's my old book, my first book, Deluxe, How Luxury Lost Its Luster. And it's exactly about this, how luxury has become a commodity that people sell on mass amounts. And, it's common. And Venice is a perfect example of it.
Well, you've got competition in the book writing department. Richard Verly, Paris correspondent for Swiss newspaper Blick, is editor of a book that connects the city to the mainland. Venise, la Vénétie est une fable. Venice, Venetia is a fable. Venetia, of course, is the wider region.
That's correct. The reason we decided to publish this book a year ago was precisely to say that there is not only Venice, there is also the region around Venice, Venetia, and that's a splendid region. And in this book, you have several interviews, including experts who already 2 years ago were complaining about the fact that some tycoons like Jeff Bezos, they were not mentioning him, could take advantage of their beloved city. All right, the book written by journalist Louisa Balin. By the way, if you're on the go, you can listen to the show wherever podcasts are streamed. Yes, the hottest wedding invite to hit Venice since George and Amal Clooney said I do back in 2014. Only this time, there is a measure of pushback. Catherine Viette gives us the vibe.
Super yachts and private jets descend on Venice for the nuptials of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez as protesters chant the 1% ruins the world in St. Mark's Square while holding up signs saying with the money from this wedding, we could rebuild Gaza. Around 250 VIPs and A-listers like Oprah Winfrey and reality star Kim Kardashian are in town for the 3 days of festivities that are estimated to cost around $55 million. Add to the mix a doppelganger for the billionaire who's been enjoying his recent celebrity.
So I arrived to the Gritty Palace luxury hotel in Venice, with a water taxi, of course. So then I got off, I went into the hotel, and they said directly, Jeff Bezos is here, and called the manager. They didn't realize I wasn't the real one.
He was even given a present of 30-year-old whiskey meant for Bezos, which he's been trying to return. The unexpected surprise comes as some residents express anger over billionaires treating the city like their own personal playground.
They are ruining the planet just for the business of making money. Don't they have grandchildren? What do they leave them?
All things considered, there's only one thing that rules the world now. Money, money, money. So we're the losers.
Earlier in the week, residents joined international NGOs in protest as they placed a 400 square meter sign in St. Mark's Square that read, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax." The bad press has caused Bezos to up his donation to the city from 1 million to 3 million euros and change the venue of his reception. But that's not enough to appease his critics, who say this spectacle highlights wider social and economic divides.
Simone Venturiti, how do you feel about the wedding?
Oh, I feel good. It's just another event that Venice is hosting. We host a lot of events every year, a lot of wedding, a lot of ceremony, a lot of important events. The Pope visit, the G20, the movie festival, a lot of private and corporate events. So this is just another event, even small in terms of number of people involved, just 200 guests. We manage even more complicated wedding. And this is the high quality event and high quality tourism that every people is talking about around Venice. But this is not the issue of Venice. So the problem of Venice and other cities around the world and around Europe is over-tourism and mass tourism, day tripper. This is the kind of tourism that damages the situation in the city of Europe. So it's just another event. And I think there will be no impact on the quotidianity of the Venetian people, but we have a protest. So if there will be some negative impact, it will be caused not by the event itself, but by the protest against the event. This is the main contradiction that we are seeing right now.
Jane Damosto, do you agree it's just another event?
Well, that is the reality. Venice is known a lot for the big events that come to the city and the large number of tourists that visit the city to make it symptomatic of over-tourism. But I'm here today to advocate and make people understand that Venice is a living city and it's a fragile city, and it should be a beacon for the rest of the world to understand how we need to be much more careful now in the face of the climate crisis and biodiversity loss. We're working very hard alongside issues connected with over-tourism to demonstrate that Venice can be something more than a tourist destination. People can earn livelihoods from other activities independent of tourism. Tourism should be something extra on top of a living city.
Dana Thomas, this is an advertisement for Venice. Activists will complain about what is it? I'm looking at the numbers. 90 private jets. We could talk about the carbon footprint of those high quality of this high quality event, as Simone Venturini called it. But at the end of the day, most viewers will watch this event and make them want to go to Venice even more, right?
That's exactly what happens. And, I've been to some of these big events. I cover the Venice Film Festival every year and the Venice Biennale, and I've been to Homo Faber, the thing that happens every couple of years about craftsmanship in the heart of Venice. And I went to Dolce & Gabbana's Alta Moda with the big show in the middle of St. Mark's Square. So it is a city that always has events and things are happening, but this is different. This is even much bigger than like when George Clooney married Amal Clooney in Giudecca at the Cipriani Hotel. This is a much bigger thing. And the thing is, cultures and towns and cities, they bend to billionaires and their money because they so badly want the money. And it changes the way towns work and behave, and the people who go there, the prices of things, everything skyrockets when they know that the billionaires are coming. And I say this talking to you from Saint-Tropez, where this has happened. And we've seen the changes in Saint-Tropez in 20 years from a cool, hip place where there were always tourists, and the summers were filled with, bohemian sorts who were going to the beach and topless, to nightclubs on the beach all day long, boom, boom music, super mega yachts, caviar and truffles everywhere you turn. And this is what's the problem of the Bezos wedding in Venice, is that it's going to lift like the Lotus, the White Lotus does to its destinations, to an unreachable place, that they're kicking out the people in the luxury hotels because they were able to pay more for the rooms in the luxury hotels. And then they just like throw money, like money buys you everything. It buys you access. It buys you to break the rules and put your mega yacht in the middle of the lagoon. And why? Because they bring money, but Venice doesn't need that much more money. And what it will do is push out the average middle-class tourist and just make way for the super rich. It's more about the haves and the have-nots.
Richard Verly, is that what this is? I mean, Jeff Bezos is worth, I don't know how many billions.
Yes, he's probably, I think, the most, he's
more than most,
second or third richest man in the world.
According to Forbes,
well, I completely understand what the deputy mayor was saying. It's one event among many events, and Venice is used to host those events. Now, Jeff Bezos is not one billionaire among many billionaires. He is a very specific billionaire. He is a billionaire who has power on you, François. He is a billionaire who has power on me because of the data that he manages. And he's that kind of millionaire that now we, a lot of people, maybe not you, maybe not me, maybe not the deputy mayor, but we tend to fear. And that's the issue. So he's not an actor. He's not George Clooney. He's a billionaire who exerts power and who recently, and that's probably also why there are those protests, he shifted from being a very anti-Trump to very pro-Trump, or at least very much in line with Mr. Trump. So I think the emotion caused by his wedding, keep in mind that his partner, soon to be his wife. She is a former host of Fox News, and everybody knows what Fox News is. So Bezos, sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I understand you defend the capacity of Venice to host those events, no problem, but Jeff Bezos is not, I would say, an average billionaire. He's probably a billionaire that a lot of traders of Venice in the ancient times who have depicted or disliked.
Simone Venturiti?
But the conversation now has shifted. So we are not talking about the event, but about the husband, Mr. Bezos. So I think that is not up to the city to have a special commission and say who can or who can't get married in Venice. So we are not a moral state. We have no moral police. We are not Iran. So I think that every private citizen in the world can do whatever they want, their rights, if I respect the law. They are not receiving any kind of special treatment from the city. You know, the yacht pier are always there for every yacht owner that want to book them. The hotels are there as any other private citizen that want to book them. So there is no special treatment. We don't just give them the key of the Palazzo Ducale or Summer Square. He rent the space as any other people can do. So this is the problem. We cannot say you can and you can't get married in Venice. It's not up to me. It's not up to the city. So this is the big misunderstanding.
Is Simone Venturiti, is Dana Thomas correct in stating that Venice doesn't need this money?
I don't think that Venice doesn't need the money. I think that the kind of events and the wedding bring a lot of income, not only to hotels and restaurants. It makes a lot of people working around this event, the florist, the artisan, the pastry chef, and a lot of people from small businesses around Venice. So this is the kind of tourism that we need, that is different from mass tourism, that bring a lot of stress to the city and doesn't bring any kind of economic impact to the city. So I think that we are just trying to find a wrong enemy right now. The enemy of a European city are not high-end events, are the mass tourism, and the city are without a powerful tool to manage this kind of new phenomenon that is overtourism. And we are doing a lot of measures to try to tackle this issue. Some measure works better, some measure work in another way, and we need to rethink that. But Jeff Bezos is not the problem of Venice. Maybe some of you can think that is the problem of the world, but it's not up to me to say who can or can't get married in Venice.
All right, the cost of the wedding, at least $10 million. Cost of the engagement ring, $3 to $5 million. That 10 million figure, by the way, some are stating numbers that are much higher. Bezos giving back, though, the wedding invite, urging no gifts, instead asking people to give to charity, donations on your behalf being made to the UNESCO Venice office, to Corilla to restore the vital lagoon habitats, to Venice International University. Dana Thomas, is this part of a tradition dating back to the Middle Ages where the richest were patrons of the arts, philanthropists, and it was a way of buying public support?
No, this is greenwashing. I mean, come on. Oh, how much money did they spend for a crisis PR person to tell them, you got to spin some positive into this because it's looking really bad? So they said, oh, let's give some money to help restore a couple things. I mean, if he really wanted to restore Venice, he could write some big personal checks. He could give some money to the Venetian fund to restore the Cadoro. I know the guy who restores all these, that he could just write enormous checks and Venice would be in great shape, as opposed to throwing this ridiculous party. But you know, there's a rule about weddings like this. The bigger the wedding, the shorter the marriage. So we're not going to wish them ill. We're going to wish them the best that we can. But, you know, if you're spending more than, you know, some people will ever even imagine to have in their entire family in a lifetime on one party, you're starting out on a bad foot, and you're pissing off the city that's hosting you. You're starting off on a really bad foot.
Richard Verdi?
Well, I have a question, if I may, to the deputy mayor, because I read, maybe it's not true, that one of the consequences of Bezos' wedding is that all taxis
Gondola taxis.
Water taxis will be fully booked during the wedding day. Is that correct? In this case, it is a bit of a problem.
No, it's a fake news that was spread 2 months ago. We have more than 200 taxi licenses around the city, and I think that the wedding can use just 30 or 40 taxis. So nothing more than a normal corporate event, big corporate event in the city. We have a lot of fashion show. We had a lot of fashion show in the last 3 years. And when we had this kind of fashion show, they just rented more taxi than Bezos' wedding. So there is a lot of fake news around this event that was spreaded. This is why I say this is not the holy grail of Venice, this kind of wedding. It's just a small piece of its economy, but it's not also the issue of Venice, the enemy of Venice. We need to be more pragmatic, less ideologic. So I think that we cannot say that we are just against or pro. We need to use and think about this event, just a normal thing that happened. We can manage it. We can exploit in a very good way, maybe asking Mr. Bezos for a long-term relation with Venice. I love what Jane said. We need to talk to the world and say that we are a contemporary city, not a Pompeii or a museum city. And we need jobs, we need function, we need high-skilled jobs, and we need to bring investor in Venice, not just to give us some donation around €1 million, but we need to ask to build a friendship with us to invest in the city and bring jobs. And Jane, she's right when she says that we need to keep alive also the soul of the city and the people that lives in Venice, not just the building around Venice.
All right, let's talk about the soul of the city. Venice, whose historical center is home to, again, just 50,000 permanent residents. Right now, by the way, it's still a guessing game as to what's going to be happening where on the wedding day. I'm not an expert on that. A lot of events due to happen at the Arsenale, as we can see on this map, and you can see it's a small place. You look out on St. Mark's Square, and you'll see there the opulent palace of the Doges, seat of a republic that lasted 1,000 years until Napoleon visited in 1797 and changed things a bit. Jane Damosto, when we talk about what Venice is all about, well, yes, it was a republic, but it made its fortune by skimming off of all the commerce that went in and out. Is it really all that different when the king of e-commerce is in town?
Of course it is. Venice was a trading empire, but together with the wealth of the exchanges that took place in Venice, Venice was a highly innovative and integrated, articulated society. They invented so many things in Venice. They invented the public health system. They invented insurance policies, all these things that came with the through flow of goods that was the result of Venice's strategic location. What's happening to Venice today? We have so much tourism. When I walk to and from work, I have to, elbow my way over the Rialto Bridge. And I think all these people are here. Of course, they have to spend differing amounts of money. There's people that just might buy a trinket. There's people like the guests of Bezos who might stay a few days and spend, tens of thousands of euros in their hotels. The question is, where is this wealth going now? If you look at Venice today, it's all these ancient buildings are the result of investment in Venice by all these people and families that made so much money out of the business of Venice. These big palaces that we can see now on the screen, they had huge communities living in there. There wasn't just like the owner of the palace and his small family. Everybody who was involved in the business of whoever built the family was part of this very diversified community, and that's what Venice has lost now. There's these very few residents left living here. There's people I know who are the only people left living in their buildings, and all the rest is Airbnb or other people living in their buildings and or not being able to live in buildings because it's unassigned public housing. Venice has a huge reserve of public housing that is being very slowly assigned to the families. It has an enormous potential to grow its population, and it has an enormous potential to offer jobs that are different from selling trinkets or working in hotels and bars. A journalist I spoke to recently found out that the typical wage of the cleaning people in the luxury hotels that are hosting the guests of the wedding is €6 an hour. There was a big luxury shop in Venice that took over the post office that had to close down recently, and none of the people that worked there were able to have a salary that allowed them to live in Venice. And this is a fundamental problem. You'd think that with all this tourism that comes through the city, we'd all be living in beautiful homes and walk on, gold-plated stones. But somehow there's something wrong in the system that this wealth and through flow of economic activity doesn't seem to stick into the territory of Venice.
Richard Verly, again, I point to your book. Is this harking back to a golden age that never was? Wasn't there always inequality in Venice? And isn't this, again, it's a city of commerce?
True. I'm not an expert of the history of Venice, but the writer, Luisa Balin, who is herself from Venice and the Venetian region, when she wrote the book, we exchanged a lot. She talked with a lot of experts. And indeed, it has always been a city of inequality. It's been a trading outpost, a trading empire. Now, maybe 2 or 3 things that are triggered by the Bezos wedding. First of all, To be fair to Mr. Bezos, I do not know, but what I read is that his guests are staying in hotels, not in Airbnb. So at least they are good for the hotel industry of the city. That's the first point. Second point, there is indeed a problem of accommodation for Venice residents, people who precisely live outside of Venice because buildings are being rented, Airbnb or others form to tourists. And that's an issue. And finally, when you look at the protest against Bezos in Venice, it is true partly that the issue is not Venice. The issue is Mr. Bezos. So I understand that the city of Venice cannot do much, but when, for example, you see on the San Marco Square the sign, Bezos, you should pay your tax, it's actually not a question related to Venice, but it's a fair question. It's a fair question because there is a big issue for those transnational companies transnational giants, internet giants, who don't pay tax. And that's a big issue for Europe. And Venice is a European city. Venice used to be a leading European city. So maybe it's the good place to ask this difficult question, even if I understand it's not to the duty of the city to decide who's going to come and marry in Venice, but it's a good place to ask those questions about tax for billionaires.
All right, about tax for billionaires. Simone Venturiti, I know that there are schemes been put in place for charging people who go into the heart of the city. There's also, you're the deputy mayor in charge of housing. What do you say about this issue of how to keep the Venetians in Venice?
We saw a documentary from 1964, black and white documentary, where the journalists were around the city interviewing Venetians, and the same problem that we are talking right now were the same 70 years ago. So it's a long time that Venice was looking around, looking for solution, and a lot of books were writing, a lot of speeches on university, a lot of summit, a lot of protest, but nobody took action. In the last year, we introduced a lot of measures. First of all, we put a stop at the automatic transformation of residential palace into hotel. Before 2016, it was easy for the owner of a palace to transform it into an hotel without any kind of permits from the city council. Right now, it's forbidden to do that. So just one hotel open after the ban. Secondly, we introduced a ban on cheap souvenir shop. It was a big problem in Venice. A lot of cheap souvenir shops were opened. Right now, they cannot open anymore. The one that exists can stay open, but in the most prestigious area, no more cheap touristic shop. Then we put a cap on the number of restaurants and takeaways, sliced pizza, and so on, that opened the last 20 years. And then we introduce a cap on the number of people per group that can go around the city with a guide or a chief or a group leader, because they were a problem for the pedestrian circulation. And then we put, of course, in charge the access fee to discourage the day tripper and just try to collect some income to restore the city and finance the public services. Because Venice is a special city, is a unique city, it's a fragile city, it's the only city in the world like that, but we have the same power and tools as any other city in Italy. Any other city in Italy. We are managing a special boat with no special power. So as any ordinary city in Italy, and even on a budget problem. Venice is very expensive to maintain, is built on the water, on wood, on mud and stones. And we have the same resources as any other city in Italy. So we need more money.
Let me ask you on this point. Simone Venturiti, viewers watching us who don't live like Jeff Bezos, who don't have who can't afford 2,000 euros a night to go to a hotel, but who want to visit Venice and who like the fact that there is a cheap EasyJet flight that can bring you there from Paris. Are you telling them that they're not welcome?
No, I'm just trying to say to be smart. Find a good period, not, of course, the high season, and find not beaten path to discover the city. There is a lot of website, a lot of book to discover the real soul of Venice. Take your time, not just one day. You need at least 3-4 days to know the city, and you can go slow in Venice. Venice is a slow city, need to be discovered on a slow rhythm. You need to discover the rhythm of the city, the rhythm of these people, the rhythm of the light of the day and of the night. You need to be smart, inform, buy a book, go away from the beaten path, avoid the touristic restaurant, the touristic shop, find the craftsman, find the artisan. There is a lot of blog, a lot of guide, even on the official site of the city, to discover the real craftsmanship, the real artisan of the city, the real event, the real place. And just get lost in Venice, go around, find new space, go into a church. We have a lot of churches, and some of the tourists doesn't know this kind of church. So you need to be smart, inform about Venice, and take it slow. Venice is a city that needs to be discovered in a slow way.
All right, the pushback against over-tourism, it's not just in Venice. It's in other destinations. Earlier this month, protesters pointing squirt guns at tourists to make a point about landlords preferring Airbnb to long-term lets. This was in Barcelona. There was also here, those are the images from Venice, but there were protests in Barcelona. 10 days ago, France's most visited tourist attraction was hit by a wildcat strike. Staff at the Louvre say they were overwhelmed just for the Mona Lisa. 20,000 visitors a day squeeze into the room that displays Da Vinci's masterpiece. The French president announced a major renovation and a scheme to charge a higher 30 euros admission price for non-European visitors as of next January. Other major tourist attractions like Versailles following suit. Dana Thomas, the answer to over-tourism, make non-Europeans pay?
Well, I think actually the problem is, as we were talking earlier, Venice was a trade capital, and they had a shipping industry, there was a port, and now what is the business of Venice? It is tourism. At one point, sometime in the last century, Venice changed its mission from being a town that produced things to a town that just welcomed people. And therefore, we're now seeing the problem that has been created by this. And the same thing in Paris, and the same thing in Saint-Tropez, where I am, and the same thing in Barcelona, is that the business is tourism. So then you get over-tourism because too many people want to go, because your entire message to the world is come visit us, and then they do. And the problem is that now you go to Venice and you ask, what do people do in Venice? They make glass. There's still a bit of that, though it's in a perilous position, the Murano glass, and they do that for decor. There is one or two places that still make some beautiful fabrics. But before but Venice itself was amazing. It produced things, and the Venetians who lived there made things, and they fished, and they wove, and they blew glass, and they did artisan work. And you had John Singer Sargent painting the family's portraits, and you had Henry James there writing books, and you had Diaghilev there choreographing ballets. It wasn't just like come and wander around and look at a few things and spend some money and leave. And that's where these cities have gotten in trouble, is that they switched their raison d'etre from a place where people live and work and produce stuff to a place where people are just told to come visit, and then they do, and the city is overwhelmed.
Jane Damosta, is it too late for Venice to go back to being a place that makes things?
Not at all. There's an amazing that within the alleyways of Venice, there's a lot of new activities emerging. There's young people who choose to work in Venice. There's a lot of wonderfully creative activities that are still in Venice that have enormous potential to expand, but the housing issue is critical, and it's maybe there have been some limits on new bars and restaurants and new hotels, but all around the periphery of Venice, all of this conversation tonight has been, I think people have been assuming that Venice is just what we're seeing here in the video footage, but the municipality of Venice extends onto the mainland. In fact, 2/3 or more of the resident population lives on the mainland. So the less than 50 million that live in Venice are just the people living in the historic city. But there's a huge pressure of population living around Venice, and that's where enormous new developments in hotels have been made in very recent years. In fact, we saw some footage of a banner outside of a hotel in Tronchetto that I don't know if it's open yet or it's about to open, of hundreds of rooms. And these hotels are accommodating tourists, I think mostly at quite low prices. And those tourists aren't coming here to see, Marghera or Mestre very much. They all want to crowd into Venice during the days, creating the pressure on the city that we see. So the tourism policy isn't simple. It needs to be articulated and take into consideration the greater area of Venice and what happens around Venice, how that impacts on Venice. This is actually a theme that was taken up by UNESCO, who are always on the verge of putting Venice on the endangered list as World Heritage, precisely because of all these pressures on the city that aren't being adequately managed.
I'm haunted, Richard Verly, by...
Francois?
Yes, go ahead.
Francois, just to bring this back to Bezos, to put it in perspective, the Arsenale, where they're now having the wedding reception, was a shipyard. Now it's a party space.
Right, and
it could
yeah,
be,
since Napoleon.
It could be, and it could. There's a very small area of the Arsenale is used for oceanography research of the National Research Council. And in 2014, when the Arsenale was taken, when it was given to the municipality of Venice to be managed as a resource for the city, there was the potential to develop other things in the Arsenale. There could be all kinds of productive activities in the Arsenale, but it's kept empty for the opportunity to occasionally or regularly host big events, which means huge amounts of materials are brought in, taken away at huge environmental costs.
yeah, and
Arsenale, it's not empty. We have the Italian Navy there with a very important base, an important study university managed by the Italian Navy. Now we are receiving back the shipyard, 3 shipyards in the Arsenale from the Mose Dam maintenance system, and we will use them as a shipyard for maintaining the boat in Venice if we find a good private partner to do that, because we cannot just say a lot of things, a lot of slogan, but then we need money and partnership to do that. Is much easier to say than done. So, of course, we have a lot of ideas around Venice.
It's to the private sector you're turning, not to the federal government in Italy.
Obtain resources to maintain the city. Of course, we need the national government to restore the budget on the special law for Venice that is not financed since a lot of years. So we need special money to deal with special costs, because even housing problem is related to this kind of gap between the ordinary cost in an ordinary city and an extraordinary cost in Venice. You know that to restore a house, a small apartment in Venice, you need to invest 200, 300,000 euro. And then you cannot just say, okay, I rent for a small rent for a resident, because it doesn't worth the investment. So this is why we need to reduce that gap. Once upon a time, the city had special finance from the government in Rome, but in the last 30 years, these resources just disappear. So we need to get back to obtain special resources to cover the gap between the ordinary city and extraordinary city. And this kind of event are used to restore Arsenale compound. It's a huge compound, but very old. And since Napoleon arrived in Venice, we had a lot of problem. So of course, Arsenale is empty, but it's being restored even with the money that we are collecting from the events.
All right, apologies for Napoleon.
Yeah, okay, I excuse you.
Richard Verly, let me
a lot of damage to the city. Maybe we still have some paint in Louvre that belong to us. Maybe if you want to get us back.
We'll put the request in. Richard Verly,
thank you.
Haunted by something that Dana Thomas said about, once the city becomes this bucket list destination, then it's difficult to inverse it. It's kind of interesting. The wedding taking place in Venice, the bachelorette party happened here in Paris. And, the images were all over Instagram and TikTok of Lauren Sanchez with the likes of Katy Perry, Kim Kardashian, Eva Longoria. Let me ask you, is there this point of no return? For years here in Paris, the locals have been complaining that it's become a museum city, that it's losing its soul. And last year, when the Olympics took place, people were like, this is great. It's an advertisement for Paris. And others said, why do we need advertisement for Paris? We already have plenty of tourists.
Well, that's very true. As far as Venice is concerned, I would give the chance maybe to Mr. Bezos and his party. I would give him a chance if during the party or after the party, the legacy, if there is a good legacy to this wedding party one way or another, beyond the donations that are called for. And I'll be curious to see if that will happen. Now, I come back to me, what is the main issue? People like Jeff Bezos, wherever they go, wherever, not only in Venice, wherever they go, they tend to pollute the place. Because the type of wealth that they have, the type of power they exert, the fact that they don't pay tax that they should pay, according to many economists, that is a problem. So the very unfortunate thing is that you have Venice somewhat stained by Jeff Bezos, not stained because he's not going to pollute the city, but still, you have today moguls, oligarchs, I don't know how to call them, tycoons, who are sometimes, wherever they go, they bring more bad than good.
We're out of time, Dana Thomas, but let me just briefly ask you, how do you get ordinary people, it's not a question about Jeff Bezos, how do you get ordinary people to go slowly, as the deputy mayor was asking?
Well, it's interesting. One of the most beautiful places in the world is the Grand Canyon. You want to go to the Grand Canyon, you have to book it ages in advance. They have a certain number of people who can come to the Grand Canyon. And when it's sold out, and you can't just drop in. Now, maybe Venice needs to start looking at the Grand Canyon as its business model. They do it to protect the Grand Canyon from overtourism and from erosion and from the destruction of too many people. And maybe there just needs to be a quota system. And when it's sold out, it's sold out.
All right, there's an idea. We'll leave it there.
I totally agree with Dana. If you can help us to obtain a special law for doing this, because Italian national law doesn't allow us to do that right now.
All right, your call is heard. Simone Venturiti, I want to thank you for joining us from Venice. I want to thank Jane Deosto, Dana Thomas in Saint-Tropez. Richard Verly, thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.